to begin writing humor columns for a newspaper. But this beginning launched a belief in herself, and a series called the Runestaff Chronicles were born. She is nominated for volume 3 in this trilogy called The Legacy. Helen, please come up.
Hello. My name is Helen, and I come from a little town called Marshall, Saskatchewan. It's sort of like Dog River, a town featured on the show Corner Gas, but without any of the laughs. I grew up and still reside on the family farm where we raise Charolais cattle and gophers. The latter is purely coincidental. I dreamed of becoming an author from a young age, and when I turned 11, I convinced my mother to write to W.O. Mitchell, acclaimed Canadian and Saskatchewan author, asking for advice. Remarkably, he did reply, albeit briefly. "Tell her to write something every day," he scrawled at the top of my mother's note. At the time, it had seemed a poor response, but even when the baby's crying, the cat has thrown up in your shoe, or your brain feels as dry as dust, writing something every day results in improvement, whether you like it or not. Still, I feared failure. In August of 2019, I sat with an elderly uncle in hospital. He clasped my hand and with tears in his eyes urged me to follow my dreams. "I had dreams once too," he said wistfully, "but you always think you have lots of time, and so you put it off. Now it's too late for me. Don't let that happen to you." Inspired and determined, I came home from that visit, and in 6 weeks I had written the first book in this fantasy series, Runestaff Chronicles. The Awakening, the first book, was published that November. Motivated and now with more confidence, I wrote 3 sequels, and at least one further book will follow. Runestaff Chronicles is about Caden, a 15-year-old boy removed from the life he loved in Toronto and plopped onto a cattle ranch in the Rocky Mountain foothills. Life becomes intolerable for him until a mysterious man appears with a dramatic message. The troubled teenager is the last hope for an endangered magical land. In The Legacy, Caden returns to this hidden world within the mountains and continues an adventure of epic proportion as he plunges into a battle against sinister forces bent on conquest and destruction. Naturally, he makes friends that help him along the way. This excerpt is taken from when Caden and his friends, Rosalind and Talbot, are helped in their quest by Magda, the keeper of vivacity and life, and healer to all those who still believe in ancient arts. "You cannot count on the Runestaff to take the 3 of you that far," Magda said, tapping a finger on her chin. "It is impossible. You are all going, correct?" She fixed him with a look. Talbot and Caden nodded. "Then I may know how to arrange transportation," she said briskly. "And word must be sent to the Silpath and what is left of the resistance. The fields and the grasses will do much of this for us." Caden sat up a little straighter. "You're going to ask a field of grass to carry messages?" he asked, already forgetting his mental note not to question such statements. "Yes," she said, considering. "Brome and Timothy are best, although the occasional fescue can be trusted." The flowers on her head perked up to listen. "As well, there are many oak varieties that are fine fellows, and naturally wheat can always be counted on. I shall speak with them directly. Barley can be a bit persnickety, and I've often found quackgrass to be a wholly untrustworthy lot. But the rest will help, even what you people consider weeds are good folk." She smiled brightly, and the flowers in her hair nodded, as if in complete agreement. Caden's mouth hung open. His brain was struggling to take it all in. He had accepted this alternate world and had learned that being part guard meant he could speak with animals, which was also pretty crazy. Heck, it had even become commonplace that gemstones stones and an old walking stick of his grandmother's held magical, transformative powers. But this? Using a bunch of grass as a messenger service? Wow. The character of Caden is loosely based on my grandson of the same name, who is now 16. That got a little weird when I was describing his romantic feelings towards the heroine of this story. But since this book is family friendly, I worked through it. I've set my stories in Canada, at least to begin and end the books, because of the love I have for our country. The in-between parts take place in a veiled world called Aaronborn, reached through a hidden portal in the Rockies. I'll just read one more portion. It's taken from further along in the journey where the three friends are overcome by evil forces, but helped by an unusual ally. Caden willed himself to move, to break free of the stupor with which his body was ensnared, but he could not. His very breath was in the dark spirit's control. One moved close, and the talons of this enemy passed like ghostly weapons through Caden's flesh and curled around his lungs. He gasped, but it was cut short as the claws tightened. He wheezed, his mind churning, eyes closing as he succumbed to the greater will. His knees buckled and he began to fall into darkness. Yet, in the haze of his own demise, Caden felt something swish and curl around his ankles. What was this fresh horror? With a monumental effort, he dragged his eyes open a crack. In the reddish hue that surrounded the dark trio who held him, Caden caught sight of what had caused the sensation at his feet. Trailing grasses, growing high in the moisture-laden soil beside the stream, had begun to twist, twirl, and wind themselves around the dark beings. They wove in, out, and through the otherworldly fabric of the specters' flowing cloaks. Yet the creatures slogged on until all three were close enough to Caden that he could feel their hollow bodies touching him. His tortured young lungs strained for air. He collapsed. Still, he did not lose consciousness, nor feel his body slam to earth. Instead, his fall was cushioned by a gentle swath of meadow grass, and his eyes beheld a strange sight. Anchoring the three dark spirits to the solidness of the good green earth, the grasses continued their winding attack. Layer upon layer, they crawled over the three entities, pushing them back and covering their dark intentions with the smell of new-mown hay and yellow clover. Then with a snap, the grasses broke the specter's hold over Caden. Evil faltered, and it was then Caden felt his rune staff come alive. I would like to thank the Whistler Independent Book Awards, Vivalog, the judges, and the Writers Festival for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
I think it's maybe time to